Hey everybody, today we are going to be making this bubble peyote bracelet. So simple peyote stitch, but with the addition of these drops to give us those bubbles. I have chosen to just do a black and white version today so you can see the pattern really well, but we do have kits that include 3 different kind of drops. So you can do a pattern or you can just do it random if you'd like. That's completely up to you. So in your kit, you would have got some size 8 seed beads, some size 15 seed beads, some drops, some jump rings, and a slide clasp. And you would have gotten thread and a couple needles to help you with your project. So this is what we're making. So we'll begin. So we're going to begin our peyote stitch. First thing I'm going to do is pick up a stopper bead. I'm going to use a bead that's a different color than all my other beads. The stopper bead will just assist us in those first couple rows of the peyote. So I'm just making a loop around that stopper bead just to lock that in place. And I left about 10 inches on the other side. So I'm going to pick up 6 of my size 8 seed beads, and I'm going to send those right down my thread to my stopper bead. Now, I'm basically going to be just making a U-turn to make my next pass. I'm going to pick up a seed bead. I'm skipping over this first seed bead and entering the second seed bead. And I'm going to pull that thread tight. And we want that seed bead to sit right on top of that one. It's going to be a bit of a mess at first, it will seem. But once we get a couple passes in, whoops, dropped my bead there. So now I'm exiting out of this second bead. I'm skipping the next one and going into the following. And that bead, we want to sit right on top of there. And then one more bead for this row. We're skipping the next bead, going into the following. We're not including our stopper bead. But that stopper bead, as I said, just helps us keep that first couple rows tight. All right, that's our next pass. As you can see, I sort of have a brick pattern just about to start. I'm going to flip this over so I'm always working in the same direction. I'm going to do one more pass. Pick up another seed bead, reversing direction again. My next bead's going to sit right there, and I'm going to go into that bead that's sticking out. My next bead I'm going to put on is going to sit right here. So I'm skipping that space and going into the next bead. And then one more time on this path. Bead's going to sit there, so I'm skipping that bead and going into that bead. Then I'm going to flip that over again, so I'm again working in the same direction. This is now going to be our first bubble row or a drop row. So I'm picking up a drop bead. That's going to sit right here, so I'm skipping that and going into that first bead that's poking out. And we're doing that all the way down for this pass. Sometimes these drops are a little bit tricky to pick up. So our next drop is sitting there, so I'm going to go into that bead, pull through. Just make sure you don't catch your thread. And then our last drop is going to sit right there. Again, having trouble picking up these drops. Don't let that fool you. Okay, that's our first drop row. So that's the row we added our drops. Let's get our tail out of the way here. This next row, we're going to use the drop to anchor our beads. So I'm taking our next bead, again, reversing direction. This bead's going to sit right here. So I'm going to use this drop to go through. Next seed bead's going to sit right between those two drops. So I'm going to, again, use that drop. And one more for this row. Again, I'm going to flip that over so I'm going the right direction. Now we want to make sure all those beads are going to be facing the same way. So I'm starting another row with seed beads, and I'm skipping the drop on this row. Skip over, go into that seed bead, skip over this drop, go into that seed bead, and then push that drop down. So we're going right in there. So that's our next row. That's the back side. So now we're going to do our second row of drops. Again, skipping over this, entering right through there. And one more for this pass. And that's going to sit right there, and I'm going to use that last bead that's sticking out. Whoops, I accidentally picked up two drops. Let me just correct that mistake there. All right, there we go, back on track now. Okay, that's our next row of drops. I'm going to flip that over. And again, this pass, now I'm going to use the drop to go into, so I'm reversing direction, skipping over the first bead, going into the drop. Just get that thread pulled. There we go. Next one. And one more for this pass. That's going to sit there, so I'm skipping that and going into this drop. My thread. So you can see how this is starting to form here. Make sure all those drops are facing the same direction. And now I'm going to do the skip the drop row. So we're skipping over the drop, entering into the seed bead. And this is how we're continuing just for the rest of our bracelet. That's all there is to it. Just back and forth, back and forth. And if you turn that over, you'll see that between each of our drops, there's going to be two seed beads. So our next row of drops, one's going to sit here, one's going to sit here, one's going to sit here. So if you want to check that you're make sure you're doing it right, just flip that over. And as you go along, make sure there's two seed beads between each drop in a row. This next drop's going right here. And that's where our two seed beads are. So we're just continue this until you get to your desired length. And then we're going to show you how to use your, how to put your clasp on. Okay, so now I have been working. I have got my desired length. And what you want to remember is the clasp and the jump rings take up about 3/4 of an inch. So you'll want to stop beading if you're looking for a 7-inch bracelet. You want to do your last drop row at about 6, and then you're going to add 3 more rows, 3 more passes, and then you'll do your clasp, and that should give you about 7 inches. Now to put our clasp on, we're going to use these little 15s. Now we're just going to continue our peyote. First one, we're going to put a seed bead there. Then the next one, instead of a seed bead, we're going to use 3 size 15 seed beads, and I'm using a coordinating color with our clasp. And then the next one, I'm also going to use 3 15s. And those are going to sit just where a bead would sit. So I'm skipping over that gap and going right into there. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to reinforce that row. So I'm going to just turn this over, and I want to step down a row here, and I want to just weave my way over to the end, the other side, so I can come back through and follow that same thread path and just reinforce that path that I did there. So I'm just going through each bead until I get to that other side. There we go. And this is the bead here, the second one down that I want to exit out of, so that when I exit out of this bead, I can go right into here. So I'm going to enter that first bead and then the second bead. And then I can make my way through these 15s, through that seed bead, through the other 3 15s, and then out through that last seed bead in the row. Just like that. So I've reinforced that row. Now what I'm going to do is I need to end this end of the side of my thread. So I am just going to weave my way back again to this side and then back again. I'm going to make a couple passes back and forth, and then I can cut my thread off. Now if you have bead woven before, you can end however you're comfortable ending. There's no right or wrong. Just want to make sure that that thread does not come loose. So again, I'm just working my way. Another pass across. You can go through more than one bead at a time if you'd like, or just one at a time. Now I've made my way back through once, and I'm going to make one more pass across the bracelet. And that's all there is to doing the ending of our thread. And then we'll be able to attach our clasp. And then we'll be able to turn it around. So I'm just going to make one more pass across here just to make sure that that thread's not going to come loose. So I'm going to continue across, and then I'm going to cut my thread off right there. Then what I will do is I will take my needle off of this end, and I will switch my needle to the tail end, and I will repeat this on our other end, so we'll have a place to connect our clasp on both ends. So I have now added my seed beads, my 15s, to my other end to attach my clasp into. And I just finished weaving back to end my thread. I will cut those off, but let me show you we're just gonna get that jump ring. We're gonna slide that jump ring right underneath those seed beads and attach our clasp. And then we're just gonna close it up. Then we can attach our other jump ring and then do the same thing to our other end. And you will then have a completed bracelet. If you've gotten your size a bit wrong, you can always extend it by adding 1 or 2 extra jump rings. So there's our second jump ring on this side. And then I will do the same thing on this side to complete our bracelet. And there is our bubble peyote.